Hey there, YouTube. I'm down here with Beagle, giving him two of his favorite things, scratches and hay. As you know, Beagle's a Galapagos tortoise. What type of Galapagos tortoise is a little bit more complicated? The Galapagos tortoise complex is that very complex. Originally thought to be a single species, they were later broken down into subspecies based on islands, but even within certain islands they vary. So currently, the different varieties of Galapagos tortoises are considered different species, and there's about a dozen left alive. And even though the exact relationship of the various Galapagos tortoises will probably continue to be argued for the next decade or so, what's really amazing and what few people know is that its closest relative, according to genetic studies, is this diminutive, unassuming tortoise known as the Chaco tortoise. If you think this might be something that you find interesting, stick around. Welcome back, everybody. Here we have Norm, Gaucho, and Taco, because you can't own a Chaco tortoise and not refer to at least one as Chaco Taco. Outwardly, these guys look a bit like a pygmy sulcata tortoise. They have the same tan or sand-colored skin and large shield scales on their arms. But that's where the similarities end. The Chaco has a narrower face than the sulcata. Males do not grow gular scutes quite as impressive as their African cousins, and the Chaco's shell shape is more oval-shaped than the average sulcata. In fact, a closer look reveals some of the physical similarities between the Chaco and the Galapagos tortoise. If you look on the front of his arm, you will see the slightly larger outturned scale. The domed types of Galapagos tortoises have a very similar forearm scale, as do another relative, the cherryhead variety of the redfoot tortoises. Looking back here, we see another pronounced scale on the Chaco that is also present on the Galapagos tortoises. And if you look at these young ones, they display stapple markings on their scutes just like newly hatched Galapagos tortoises. As the Chaco grows, their dappling also recedes. Looking at their skin color, especially young ones, they have a chocolate color, but that is not where the name comes from. Their common name is derived from the portion of South America from which they originate, the Gran Chaco region. In fact, they can be found from southern deserts of Argentina all the way north to the humid semi-tropical regions of Bolivia and Paraguay. If we were to make a comparison with the equivalent north to south range in the northern hemisphere, these guys' wild counterparts could be found from New York City all the way down to Cancun in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Like all South American tortoises, they're in the Chelonoidis genus. Their species name is chilensis. Somewhat ironically, an area where these guys do not occur is the country from which their scientific species name is derived. Back in 1870, the fellow who described them was a renowned zoologist, but clearly not the best at geography. Despite this 150-year-old mistake, the name remains. Within their native range, they inhabit many different habitats. They can be found in both the humid and drier areas of the Chaco region. They can be found living up in the foothills of the eastern slopes of the Andes, and as their range continues south, transitioning away from grasslands, the Chaco tortoise still managed to eke out a living in the harsh Argentine desert region known as Patagonia. Looking at images from that part of the world, the viewer could easily make the mistake of believing they were looking at the deserts and scrublands surrounding Phoenix and Tucson in the southwest United States. Prior to genetic studies being conducted, further taxonomic confusion existed with the Chaco tortoise. Early on, they were believed to be a South American form of the North American Gopherus genus, which includes Sonorna Mojave desert tortoises, Bolson's tortoise, and the gopher tortoise of the southeast United States. This was based on superficial physical similarities and the similarities in the habitats in which both tortoises live. As I mentioned, some of the Chaco tortoise's habitat is near identical to the southwestern United States, but when looking at the gopher's complex of tortoises compared to the Chaco, one slender, key difference is very apparent. Chaco tortoise lack the neutral scute of the North American Gophers genus that we can see here on this Sonoran desert tortoise. Incorrect assumptions about the wild habits of the Chaco, likening them to the gophers and desert tortoises, still persist in literature today. Reading about Chacos may lead you to believe that they dig and live in and around burrows much like their northern cousins and even closer cousin, the sulcata tortoise. A field study conducted in 2008 by the Turtle Conservancy in Uruguay and Argentina completely contradicted this known fact. Of the roughly 30 tortoises encountered and studied, only one was found in or near a burrow. Whether the tortoise had dug the burrow or was capitalizing on the efforts of other excavating wildlife really couldn't be determined. Most wild chacos were found wandering around or dug into roots of trees and bushes or beneath the bases of large rocks, much like most other non-tunneling tortoises. My own personal observations of the trio that I care for lends further support to the non-tunnel argument. Norm, and both of these little ones, prefer to seek out a corner or other hard boundary area and just etch out a small palette for themselves, just as my leopards, radiated, and various star tortoises do. Since moving this waterland enclosure outside for these little guys, it would seem that Norm's preferred resting place has become the tunnel created by the ramp divider of the waterland tub. As if there were not already enough confusion over the Chaco's place in the Chelonian clade, until genetic studies refuted the notion, some herpetologists believe there may be as many as 3 distinct species or subspecies of Chaco. Generally speaking, as you move south in the Chaco's native range, the tortoises can max out as much as 2/3 larger than their northern relatives. The shells are also less domed, and males have the typical concavity on the plastron, which is not very distinct in the northern variety. Genetic studies have concluded there is no appreciable genetic variation between Chaco tortoises throughout the range, but rather population-specific traits. All of the genes are the same, their outward expression is simply highly variable, like human hair color, eye color, and height. Now that I've talked about their confusing and contentious natural history, let me tell you about these guys as far as captivity goes. Just a few decades ago, Chaco tortoises were exported by the thousands from Argentina. Currently, the IUCN lists these guys as vulnerable, though no comprehensive population studies have been done recently. As it turns out, this species does not adapt well to captivity, with the vast majority of those tortoises having died many years ago. With a poor supply of wild stock, captive breeding of the species is somewhat stunted compared to other tortoises that have been kept by breeders. Even though there are not a lot of people breeding the species, there are enough that captive bred specimens like these 3 are available for purchase with increasing frequency. The unknown availability of these tortoises still means they command a pretty good price. Chacos are priced very similarly to spider tortoises, radiated tortoises, and Burmese star tortoises. As one would expect, unlike their wild-caught predecessors, captive-bred Chacos do very well when kept in the proper conditions. I've had success keeping my smaller ones here using the same format as most every other baby tortoise that I keep. Temperatures are maintained in the 80s, humidity is similar, I soak them almost daily, with food being offered as often or more so. And as they progress out of the delicate hatchling stage and mature, temperature fluctuations into the 90s and down into the 70s won't harm these guys. My experience and that of other keepers with whom I talk, these guys are strictly herbivorous. Unlike their South American relatives, the redfoots and Galapagos tortoises, these guys seem to have little to no interest in animal protein sources. In addition to the prepared diets, I give all of these guys the same types of greens that I give all of my other tortoises, and you can see that Norm has been grazing on the wild grasses out here. Of course, in concert with a good diet rich in calcium, UVB, be it natural unobstructed sun or a quality artificial bulb, must be provided to ensure smooth growth and solid shell development. The northern populations of Chaco tortoises tend to average 7 to 10 inches, with the females being the larger of the two. So, if you're looking for something on the unique side, you have the knowledge and willingness to care for something a bit more exotic, but don't have the space to dedicate to a Galap, Aldabra, or radiated tortoise, this might be a good choice for you. Most Chacos that I have seen in U.S. collections seem to have originated in the northern regions of their range. The southern populations can actually attain sizes of 15 to 17 inches. Their robust size may be an adaptation in response to colder winters, during which they brumate, and more harsh summers with less available edible plants. A larger tortoise has a better chance of pushing through such lean times and more difficult conditions. All tortoises are known to brumate in the colder southern locations and estivate in the dry, hotter summer months in their northern populations. Having talked with a few different keepers, it seems that keeping them awake all year and giving them a winter brumation period both work equally well. Neither seems to be detrimental to their health nor discourage reproductive behavior. While I will keep the babies inside and awake through the winter, I have yet to decide what I plan to let Norm do this winter. If I do decide to let him take a winter nap, there is a nice thick layer of mulch for him to dig into out here, and the ground below is much softer and easier to dig in than the exposed ground in most of my yard. As long as you stick to the basics and source a captive-bred tortoise, keeping a Chaco tortoise can be a positive, remarkable experience for you and your shell one. I want to give a special thanks to my spectacular camera assistant, also known as my wife. She's usually behind the camera. I very much appreciate her helping to corral these guys and get some awesome close-ups. I hope you enjoy this brief look into the world of this underrepresented fascinating tortoise. If you enjoyed this video, click the thumbs up and give it a like, and share it with your fellow tortoise and reptile enthusiasts. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.